We just really want it to stop raining. And I think that's what the whole community wants right now, is just to stop raining.
Yeah, I think just about the entire state is with you on that one, Ann. But especially here in Waterville, where some have to get in a kayak just to leave their home. New tonight, county leaders there say that the flooding has forced them to declare a state of emergency.
Especially with more rain on the way. The city, which is about an hour south of the metro, is just swamped. Here's why. They're surrounded by 2 swollen lakes and a pair of waterways that are overflowing with all the rain. Uba Ali shows us how the community is facing the flood of trouble together.
The rain continues to fall.
I'm really nervous and scared about everything that's going on right now.
As Lake Sakata swallows docks and inches closer to Ann Brolick's camper.
I've never seen anything like this before. It's crazy.
Parts of Waterville are underwater, forcing residents to get creative to stay dry, while others ditch their cars to get around.
You pretty much have to be on a kayak right now.
In this small community of less than 2,000 people, the sound of some pumps and sandbagging echo.
As fast as we load, trucks, families are coming in to load.
Well over 7,000 sandbags have been filled, but despite the efforts, LeSueur Emergency Management Director Tammy Stewig says they need one thing.
Why can't that water just go down for us and help these families out some?
We just really want it to stop raining. And I think that's what the whole community wants right now, is just to stop raining.
And until the lakes recede, it's this community showing up for one another.
We just feel like we're part of the community now, that we camp here, and he just wanted to really go help out.
And if you want to help, they're filling more sandbags tomorrow from 9 to 2 and then again from 6 to 8. In Waterville, Uba Ali, WCCO News.
About an hour south of the cities in Waterville, people are hard at work trying to stop the rising waters there. The Cannon River runs through 2 big lakes surrounding the town. Today, volunteers continue to put sandbags together as rain keeps falling and water keeps rising. In some parts of town, standing water is inching closer to homes and campgrounds. Our John Lauritsen is keeping a close eye on the changes. He joins us live from Waterville. John, what can you tell us out there?
Yeah, Sheila, a lot of activity here this morning, as you might imagine. In fact, we've got some sandbagging going on behind me. They just had another load come through. They're sandbagging this house behind us right now. A lot of volunteers, people from all over the community have been showing up. And that's really the big thing here in Waterville they keep talking about, is strangers helping strangers and people just stepping out of the woodwork to really assist. So it's been a full-time activity here for the poor folks of Waterville the last couple of days. You can kind of see that Cannon River, and where Dave Cheney, photojournalist, is kind of going right now with the camera. That's, as you mentioned, Shayla, 2 rivers that run, or a river that runs through 2 lakes rather. And this is an extension of that, one of those lakes that's kind of creeping up here onto this street. That's a dental practice right there. That's where they were working all morning. And you can see how they sandbagged that, trying to save that dental practice from flooding. A problem here that we're seeing is when Dave and I got out here a couple hours ago, the water was just kind of creeping up on the dental practice, the dental office there. Now it's come all the way down the street, and unfortunately it's getting close to some of these homes, which is why they're sandbagging right now. We probably have a couple dozen volunteers. We've talked with teachers, we've talked with people who work in construction, we've talked with people obviously who work at the dental office here, coming out to help save their business, but also then subsequently coming to save some of these homes, Sheila. So we have water that continues to rise. You can see the rain coming down on me right now. You can see the rain coming down on these volunteers behind me. Again, when we got here this morning, Shayla, just a couple hours ago, it was creeping up on that dental office that we have here. It's been there for about 50 years, actually, they're telling me, the dentist that runs that. And then ever since then, in the last couple hours, it's come up to about where I'm standing now. In fact, even beyond. It's behind these cars behind me now. So a full-time job here. A couple more inches of rain, from what I'm hearing, is expected in Waterville. So fingers crossed for the folks here. They continue to ask for more volunteers, and they continue to work hard to try and save their homes and businesses.
All right, John Lauritsen reporting some of those properties looking more like islands right now as they continue that sandbagging process. Thanks so much, John. Rain
Rain continues to fall and water continues to rise in the town of Waterville. Volunteers have been working all day to help sandbag.
John Lorison is there to show us how the town is coming together to fight the rising water.
It needs to get done, and people need help, so let's get out and help.
It's that small town mentality that might just save Bill Struve's dental practice.
You know, there's been times when there's been water over the road, but nothing like this.
Struve has been a dentist for decades, and he's seen flooding before. But this is the first time he's been worried about some of his dental equipment getting damaged.
This is the Cannon Lake system, and, you know, we have a lot of rain coming in from the north. That's the problem. You got 3 or 4, areas that, we drain from the north and a little slow going to, out of here. So we'll see what happens.
At least he's getting a hand from not only neighbors, but also patients.
We thought, well, it's just preventive. It won't get that high. And I came today and I'm like, oh my God. I started calling patients like, can you help us? We're going to be underwater here.
Within a matter of hours, the water went from the dental practice up the street, and it's getting closer to these homes, adding to the urgency here in Waterville.
Even from this morning, it's creeped up a lot. I mean, this wasn't even in our front yard before, so it's getting pretty scary.
As the rain continues, sandbaggers quickly work to protect Lindsay Carlson's house, one of many getting attention in a waterlogged Waterville. Knowing that volunteers are willing to step up gives her peace of mind.
I'm from a small town, and I always said I would live in a small town because that community it's where it's at. They all come together and help when you need it.
In LeSueur County, John Lorison, WCCO News.
With rain falling much of the day, Waterville officials aren't sure when the floodwaters will crest. City leaders say anyone that wants to help sandbag more volunteers would be very welcome right now. Governor Tim Walz plans to make a disaster declaration to help hard-hit communities in Minnesota. He toured flood damage up north in the town of Cook today. This is the nearly 90-year-old Comet Theater. As you can see, it is nearly completely submerged up to the seats. Business owners say this is a double hit after a winter with very little snow also hurt the local economy. Walz says it's important for those affected to keep receipts so the state can eventually help.
Because the way this process works is we'll do a damage assessment over the coming days and weeks. Those will get funneled up. If we hit a threshold number that it looks like we will in some of these areas, but we won't know until all those receipts are in, we can apply for a federal or a presidential declaration. Once that happens, that opens up FEMA dollars to come down.
The governor says FEMA funds will cover 75% of public infrastructure and the state will cover the other 25%. He says if the state doesn't meet that threshold, he will use the state disaster assistance contingency account. Those are state funds set aside for emergencies. We'll continue our continuing coverage of the rain and the floods with our next weather team, and they'll of course be monitoring conditions on TV and on our stream, CBS News Minnesota.
Flooding in one Sibley County town is leaving residents with only one way in or out. Henderson is feeling the impacts of the rising Minnesota River. It's forcing road closures, and as our Uba Ali found out, it's proving to be a headache for residents with long commutes.
This is supposed to be a portion of Highway 19 here in Henderson, but recent rainfall has turned it into an extension of the Minnesota River. And with the floodwaters expected to continue to rise, residents say it's this dike and sandbags that's giving them hope.
We're relying on dirt to protect our livelihood here.
A typical stroll now has Kyle Hilgers on pins and needles as the Minnesota River rises. As it creeps even closer, after completely covering a portion of Highway 19 East, forcing a closure.
It makes the commute every day a big pain in the butt.
Even more so with Highway 93 closed for construction to raise it approximately 8 feet, putting it 1 foot above historic high water levels. County Road 6 also under construction to avoid future flooding, leaving Highway 19 going west as the only option.
It's a good thing there's only 900 people here.
Meaning longer drive times and more miles for those with an already long commute.
Just for what I drive in 2 weeks' time just to go to work and back, I drive to Florida. It's the same distance.
As residents shell out more money at the pump, businesses are also feeling the pinch.
The road closures have definitely impacted our flow here in Henderson for all the businesses.
But that's not stopping a community fighting to stay above water.
Just one day at a time.
In Henderson, Uba Ali, WCCO News.
We are following breaking news this morning in Waterville, where there is significant flooding and the National Guard has been called in to help. Waterville is in LeSueur County, just over an hour southwest of the Twin Cities. Volunteers are still needed to help fill sandbags there. Barrett Leone joins us live from Waterville. Barrett?
Well, Esme, it's really a stunning scene here in town. And to be honest, this isn't even the worst of it. Like you said, Governor Tim Walz has asked the National Guard to come step in and help. He's also declared a peacetime emergency here in town. Neighbors tell us that this street, which is about past my ankles now, was dry Friday night. Today, clearly, that's a different story. But roads are closed around town, so we don't have a way of safely showing you everything that's going on around here, but you're seeing scenes like this street just completely washed out everywhere around town. Now, Waterville is quite literally underwater, parts of it. The area has seen 14 to 18 inches of rain. Some areas worse than others with floodwater knee deep to hip deep, but what's been really cool to see is the terrific community effort. There's an ongoing sandbagging effort over at the Waterville City Shop, dozens of volunteers there now, and organizers say they're still urgently in need of volunteers. It was those volunteers that helped Tammy and Lonnie, neighbors here, secure their home.
Just volunteers from the town and from out of town, and businesses coming from out of town and just coming and helping and volunteering and help sandbag. You know, half these people we didn't even know, and they were in knee-deep water helping us out. So that was really appreciative. So.
Lonnie and his wife, Tammy, say they just bought their house on this street in September, but they've lived here their entire lives. They've never seen anything quite like this, and that's actually been the word from several longtime residents here in Waterville. Again, we have yet to see a National Guard presence here in town. We do know that several lawmakers are touring flooded areas, including Waterville. Back to you, Esme.
All right, Barrett Leone reporting from Waterville. Thank you so much, Barrett. Now, right now, Minnesota's 2 U.S. senators are in the city of Carver touring the levee area with the mayor and other city leaders. The Main Street West Bridge is closed, and there is a temporary extension of the levee along Spring Creek, which drains into the Minnesota River. You can see Senator Tina Smith and Senator Klobuchar there. The senators will later head over to Waterville and meet up with Congresswoman Angie Craig.
Tonight, overwhelming scenes from Waterville in southern Minnesota. This is the area specifically named in a peacetime emergency declaration by Governor Walz late last night. We'll have more on what that declaration means coming up shortly. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Derek James. You can see here where flood warnings are still in place across Minnesota and western Wisconsin. In Rice County, rivers rose fast overnight, flooding into neighborhoods in Morristown, Faribault, Warsaw, and other small communities. WCCO's Kirsten Mitchell was there today as people raced to save their homes.
Hey, my phone's going to blow up. Hey, Todd.
Michelle Vogel.
You need another 40 bags?
Put out a call for help on Facebook.
We need 40 more bags!
And the community.
We had people shoveling, people filling, people tying, and people hauling.
Showed up.
We've done over 3,000 bags today.
She owns the Channel Inn in Warsaw.
In my 35 years out here, never seen the water this high.
They're still dry, but just across the bridge.
This is devastating to us.
Dockstock Campground is underwater ahead of the busy 4th of July weekend.
Over in this area right here, that had just a few puddles in it yesterday morning, and this is what we're at today.
The last few visitors canoed out to their campers to grab what they could.
As I have the best group of campers ever, and they are more supportive than I could be for them hardly today, because I'm just devastated over what has happened to them.
In Faribault, Dennis and Connie Drentlaw took a ride around the neighborhood.
We spent all day dishing out water and throwing out furniture and ripping up carpet. But when you drive around and see what's around us, I feel very fortunate.
They haven't seen flooding like this in all their time living in the city.
We just want to express that. Our hearts go out to the Faribault community. Yeah, Waterville.
Very sad.
Morristown, Warsaw. It's pretty widespread. Sad, but
yeah,
we'll get through it.
Oh yeah. We'll get through.
Rice County officials really want people to stay out of the floodwater and adhere to the road closures. Not only is that water moving very fast, but it also could contain sewage, toxic chemicals, and other sharp objects. Reporting in Rice County, Kirsten Mitchell, WCCO News.
Starting tomorrow morning at 7:30, Rice County residents can start dropping off flood-contaminated materials at the county's solid waste facility.
Turning to the weather now and the dangerous flooding impacting millions of Americans in the Midwest. This video shows the devastation across South Dakota after days of rain caused rivers to overflow. At least one person was killed. Evacuations were ordered in parts of Iowa after the heavy rains destroyed homes and swallowed farm fields. Iowa's governor called the flooding in the state catastrophic.
Mayor Lee from CBS Minnesota is joining us now from, of all places, Waterville, Minnesota. I mean, you can't sort of escape the obvious irony. Jennifer, how's it looking out there?
I mean, the water continues to rise here. Historic rainfall fell over the last few days, and it led to catastrophic flooding, washing out entire neighborhoods. And you can see sandbags here around this home, hoping to keep the water out as it continues to rise. And it's not just here. Record-setting flooding inundated parts of Iowa and South Dakota.
Here in Waterville, parts of the city are underwater.
They said it's only going to get worse, and so we're just bracing, and hopefully it's not going to get any worse than this.
A state of emergency remains where up to 18 inches of rain fell here. The National Guard is expected to arrive today and help with the rising flood waters.
It's ridiculous. I don't even know if there's a word for it. It's just unbelievable.
Parts of Iowa are underwater, too. Drone video over Rock Valley shows only roofs and trees are visible from above. There were 250 water rescues on Saturday alone.
I can tell you the devastation is severe and it's widespread.
The state's governor issued a disaster declaration in 21 counties after more than a dozen rivers flooded in the northwest part of the state.
In almost every community impacted, the rivers crested several feet above record levels from the floods of 1993.
In South Dakota, at least one person was killed after heavy rains and flooding inundated the eastern part of the state. Floodwaters there will continue to pose a threat. Across other parts of the Midwest, severe weather spawned 6 tornadoes that struck southern Wisconsin over the weekend. In Argyle, storms flattened the historic Apple Grove Lutheran Church, founded in 1893.
And Minnesota senators visited the area yesterday and said they're working with the federal government to deliver more assistance to these hard-hit areas. Now, the chance of more storms here remains low, but other parts of the Midwest will remain on alert later today, Anne Marie.
So, Jen, I'm just sort of learning about Waterville. I mean, is this an area that typically floods when there's a lot of rain, or is this completely out of the ordinary for them?
I mean, it does see flooding, but this kind of flooding is out of the ordinary. I was just talking with the fire chief, and he said this is worse than the historic 1965 flooding, saying it's 23 inches above that time. And it's worse than the flooding we saw a decade ago in 2014. The water here, they are worried that it continues to rise. They have more sandbags coming in, 70,000 filled and put out so far, more people filling them today. He tells me that this is just something that the community is worried about. And also, when we talk about flood insurance, Anne Marie, in an area like this, because it's prone to flooding, but not this bad, he said very few people have it because it's so expensive. I talked to a homeowner here just across the street. They said they do not have that flood insurance. So sandbags, more of them are even going up as that water continues to rise.
Oh, man. And you know, that's a problem just clear across the country, the issues with flood insurance. Jennifer, thank you very much.
That's just a tin building behind it.
You can see and hear the power of the Blue Earth River. Rising water levels led to the partial failure of the dam in the town of Rapidan this morning. The water is washing away buildings and power lines next to the dam, leading to power outages and dangerous debris in the water. Today we have a next weather alert as widespread flooding continues in Minnesota and western Wisconsin. An already tense situation in southern Minnesota could be reaching critical mass.
People there are worried about the future, and some don't know if they will be able to rebuild. The town of Rapidan is southwest of the Twin Cities in Blue Earth County. John Lauritsen shows us how people are now bracing themselves for the worst.
Everyone, John Lauritsen back again here in Blue Earth County, right by the Rapidan Dam, a very historic dam. It's been here about 115 years, but as you can see, The integrity of the dam is in jeopardy. All that debris due to floodwaters here from the Blue Earth River pushed up against the dam. That has caused the river itself to carve a niche around that western side of the dam and really right into that bank. This morning there was a loud bang, several loud bangs reported by people who live nearby as that part of the river, as it carved that niche out, took out an Xcel Energy substation, it took out a Blue Earth County shed, it took out power poles, it took out trees, all that in the river now. And throughout the day, that rerouting of the river has carved itself into that bank. You can see that home. It's kind of just hovering now, at least the east side of the home, hovering over the bank there. That's in trouble, according to the Sheriff's Department. We caught up with people, family members who have worked in that store and lived in that home for decades.
We never ever thought in a million years this would ever happen, and here it is, and we thank everybody for all the well wishes and all the text messages we've gotten over the course here.
And once again, you can see just how fast and powerful that Blue Earth River, the floodwaters are rushing right through that side of the dam. Coming up tonight at 6 o'clock, a little more from the sheriff on what they're hoping here. They hope this will crest tomorrow and that this river will start to subside, but they can't say that for sure. We'll also hear more from that family that's lived in that home and run that business next door for 50 years. Here in Blue Earth County, John Lordson, WCCO News.
The governor called in the National Guard to help residents in the small town of Waterville.
They've been battling high water for days. It's just about 70 miles south of the Twin Cities. As our team coverage continues, Caroline Cummings shows us how residents are getting ready for more flooding to come.
Waterville remains underwater tonight. Residents trying to navigate parts of their community that look less like a town and more like a river.
I was back today. Some guys were decent enough to help me out with their John boat, and I got some of my stuff out of there.
Michael Hildebrandt hitched an unlikely ride to check on his home feet deep with water.
Everything's underwater, but yeah, it's been a long time since I've seen anything like this.
Many Waterville residents woke up this morning and they looked out their front doors and they saw this, streets completely washed out, and they're trying their best to keep that water from creeping up to their homes by lining the sidewalks and their property with the sandbags you see here. Dennis Caro is one of them. His home, he says, represents his livelihood and he wants to protect it.
It's unreal. It's devastating actually for me, because I've never seen this in 20 years.
44 soldiers with the National Guard are on the ground monitoring pump stations like this to help keep the water moving as more rain could be coming.
So we're trained for a variety of domestic operations. Flood fight operations is one of SID mission sets that we can take on.
But for people who call this home like Hildebrandt, they're hoping for the best, and they're seeing the best in each other.
You know, you can say what you like about, small towns, but everybody kind of rallies around, brings out the best in everybody.
In Waterville, Caroline Cummings, WCCO News.
Our next weather team coverage does not stop there. Right now, businesses in Northfield are preparing for a potential rush of floodwaters to impact them. WCCO's David Schumann is there with the latest. David?
Amelia, we are in the heart of downtown, right on the Riverwalk, which is mostly flooded all the way down in that direction. And now if we come back this way, let me show you what this business is having to do. There are thousands of sandbags stacked up here, and there's a pump getting as much water as possible back over the flood wall into the river. It still could be days, too, before the Cannon River gets below flood stage. Coming to work Monday in Northfield for these men and women didn't entail the usual financial planning for clients. It was about continuing to minimize the water damage from a swollen Cannon River.
First thing, we added the barrier, the sandbags. Great community effort. Probably over 100 people showed up to help.
I just feel for all the people and businesses that are here, just what they're going through and trying to keep their businesses safe.
The river crested Sunday night, unofficially at a record high level, and Northfield's police chief says he expects it to still be at flood stage through Friday.
It was very helpful that the governor declared a state of emergency for the entire state.
And so that freed up state and federal resources.
Sarah Fortner worked by the river's edge collecting samples for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. She's the director of sustainability at Carleton College in Northfield, and she and her students will measure the water for sediment and clarity.
From a climate change perspective, we're having amplified hydrology in Minnesota, so a lot more of these flood events than there used to happen in the past. So I think there were 5 100-year floods in the last 15 years, and this might be 6.
The sheer might of this water and what it can do, not lost on anyone who watches it.
Just seeing it up against the bridge, it kind of makes it a little bit more powerful to see what Mother Nature can do.
It's pretty incredible. I mean, it's the force of nature that we all are around all the time, but you don't appreciate it until it's on top of you like this.
I spoke to the state representative for Northfield today, and she told me there are some preliminary discussions of opening a special legislative session to release emergency relief funding. Governor Tim Walz said today he is open to that. In Northfield, David Schumann, WCCO News.
Thank you, David.
High water is also impacting us here in the metro. In St. Paul's, Shepherd and Warner's Road from Eagle Parkway to Highway 61 are closed. The mighty Mississippi is creeping into Harriet Island. That's where we find our Barrett Leone. Barrett, how are things looking where you are?
Hey Shayla, it's a bit soggy here in Harriet Island. If you're looking behind me, you might think this is the Mississippi River. It's actually just flood water that seeped in to Harriet Island. Behind it, you can see the Mississippi there. And we know that things are expected to get worse. The river has not crested yet, but Public Works has been busy. St. Paul Emergency Management have been busy preparing this area, boarding up Harriet Island Pavilion, closing off trailheads, roads, and more. Now, the Mississippi River is expected to crest this weekend in St. Paul and tipping this area into a major flood stage. Right now, the capital city is dealing with moderate flooding with water sitting at 16.5 feet. By Saturday, it's predicted to reach more than 20.7 feet. Here at Harriet Island, we saw people a bit in awe of the high water. Many tell us they walk here regularly, and it's been surprising to see how quickly things have crept up.
So I'm just trying to go on a walk down here and realizing that that's not exactly an option.
It's just crazy. Me and my friend went for a walk 5 days ago, and you could see, we could park in this parking lot.
It's replenishing the soil. It's replenishing aquifers. It's filling up our rivers for sure.
These images show just how quickly the water is rising. They were taken just 2 days apart. We do know that at least 3 rides at Valley Fair are closed for the rest of the week due to flooding. And again, both the mighty Mississippi and the Minnesota River aren't expected to crest until this weekend. Shayla.
Right, just a sign of that significant impact. Our Barrett Leone reporting.
As rivers crest in the coming days, communities across Minnesota will be cleaning up.
Our Ubo Lee shows us the ways you can help.
For weeks, rivers have been raging. From Waterville to Cook, parts of the state are dealing with devastating floods, and residents are looking for relief.
The best thing you can do for anyone that you run into that might be impacted for the flood is to let them know to call 211 so that they know the resources out in their communities.
Dorothy Maples leads the Salvation Army Emergency Disaster Services.
The biggest thing to remember for these communities is when you show up is to first be an ear. Never assume what somebody else needs. Ask.
She believes volunteering or donating money is the most effective way you can help right now. On the ground, about 25 Salvation Army volunteers are spread out across the state in St. Louis County, serving 400 meals a day. In places like Faribault.
In the process of delivering what we call flood kits. They are cleanup kits for homeowners.
American Red Cross also manning 6 shelters and a temporary evacuation point. You can help these safe shelters by donating online at redcross.org or calling 1-800-RED-CROSS. As sandbagging continues in Waterville, the city set up an account at Franson Bank and Trust. You can donate online or by mailing a check. Uba Ali, WCCO News.
For more information and links on where to donate, just head to WCCO.com.
Heads up for drivers heading to and from Mankato, a major closure in southern Minnesota involving Highway 169 due to flooding. Both directions are closed from Le Sueur to Highway 22 in St. Peter. Also, 169 from St. Peter to Mankato is closed. There are several detours involving Highway 99, County Road 13, and many more roads. No timetable on how long this will last, so plan accordingly.
Today, the threat of major flooding remains around many parts of the state as rivers continue to rise.
Here's the latest. The Blue Earth River continues to rage around the Rapidan Dam near Mankato. Officials say the threat of the dam being breached has gone down. However, they're still concerned because the dam was built on sandstone bedrock that can further erode. The dam experienced a partial failure yesterday. There is a levee system protecting the city, and officials say they're confident it will hold up. The Army Corps of Engineers and federal officials are assessing the damage.
We have team coverage for you this afternoon from some of the hardest hit areas, including North Sioux City, South Dakota. We begin, though, with Barrett Leone in St. Paul, where the mighty Mississippi continues to rise.
A picnic table, now a photo stop in St. Paul.
So I'm just trying to go on a walk down here and realizing that that's not exactly an option.
Walking around the river might not be an option.
It's up substantially from yesterday.
But with some detours, Michael Austin still made his daily cycle happen.
I knew there was going to be flooding. I knew the trails were flooded. It was a question of how deep.
St. Paul city crews have been busy blocking off roadways, trails, and sandbagging structures.
It's bad, but I think there's a difference between bad and disastrous.
Now, this actually isn't the Mississippi River behind me, although it might look like it. It's actually just floodwater that's crept into Harriet Island here. And this is only expected to get worse. The river will raise another 4 feet by the time it crests on Saturday.
And it's just crazy how much it's risen in just 5 days. So.
Yeah. And it's not the only park with high water. In Shakopee, the Minnesota River is spilling into Valley Fair Amusement Park, causing 3 rides to close Tuesday. These photos, taken just 2 days apart, show its speed.
We've had 3 years of drought. This is definitely breaking that cycle.
Still, seeing floodwaters up close is a surprise.
I come down here and it's a whole different world.
In St. Paul, Barrett Leone, WCCO News.
As you heard, the Mississippi and Minnesota rivers have not crested yet. Experts do think that will happen this weekend.
Just a short time ago, Governor Tim Walz and Senator Amy Klobuchar flew over flooding in southern Minnesota. The governor says they saw major damage in cities like Henderson, Le Sueur, and Mankato, but the worst may be in Waterville.
The human impact was certainly in Waterville, many more homes. The impact certainly feels pretty dramatic with up to the second floor, and I would estimate dozens and dozens of homes and certainly a lot of wet basements.
The governor says flooding is impacting at least 40 counties. Even further south in Minnesota, the Des Moines River has swamped cities along its banks. Our Derek James is in Jackson to see how locals are trying to stay afloat.
The West Fork of the Des Moines River runs right through Jackson. As you can see here, dikes have been set up along the Springfield Parkway and Highway 71, which is a major road here in town, as they expect that floodwaters will continue to rise over the next day or so. They say the worst is still to come. A lot of dirt is being moved along the banks of the Des Moines River in Jackson. Parts of this community of 3,300 have been fighting flooding since Saturday. Dikes have been built to hold back fast-moving waters from the bridge over Highway 71.
I was on it the night it started actually overflowing, coming over the top of the bridge.
This aerial video shows the scope of the damage to homes and businesses so far near the river's edge. Most of Jackson's downtown has been protected. The dikes have limited flooding at American Legion Post 130, which took on several feet of water 55 years ago.
1969, it was one brick up off of the sidewalk. It was about a ½ inch to an inch of going in our doors on the main floor. And our basement, when you opened the door, it was on the landing. The basement was full all the way to the rafters.
As waters continue to rise, residents continue to sandbag and pump water, knowing they're doing all they can.
As soon as they knew, they did everything they could between the city and the county and to make it work.
The Des Moines River here at Jackson currently stands at 15.7 feet. It's forecast to crest at 16.2 sometime tomorrow night and then slowly recede out of flood stage sometime early next week. In Jackson, Derek James, WCCO News.
It's not just Minnesota. Record-breaking flooding is ravaging other parts of the Midwest as well. A fast-moving river brought down a railroad bridge near the Iowa-South Dakota state line. Our Jonah Kaplan is in North Sioux City, South Dakota, where cleanup is underway.
Hi, Frank and Amelia. We've made it into South Dakota. We're in Union County in North Sioux City, and this is I-29 right here. This is what's been shut down since Sunday, 24 miles of it. And I want you to look here at the army of trucks, sweepers, front loaders, dump trucks, and they are not just trying to pick up all the mud and debris off the roadway, but they've got to just clean every last bit of it because, I mean, think of it. If you have mud on the highway, people are going to be traveling 70, 80 miles an hour. You can't have any slick spots. It has to be absolutely safe for traffic. There are 20,000 cars that go back and forth every day on this important corridor. And coming up tonight on the CBS Evening News, coming up soon at 5:30, we just got done talking to South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem. And we also take you to a neighborhood that when you see the destruction, it looks more like a hurricane or an earthquake than it does a flood. Frank and Amelia, back to you.
All right, Jonah, thank you. As rivers crest in the coming days, communities across Minnesota will be cleaning up.
Our Ubo Lee shows us the ways you can help.
For weeks, rivers have been raging. From Waterville to Cook, parts of the state are dealing with devastating floods, and residents are looking for relief.
The best thing you can do for anyone that you run into that might be impacted for the flood is to let them know to call 211 so that they know the resources out in their communities.
Dorothy Maples leads the Salvation Army Emergency Disaster Services.
The biggest thing to remember for these communities is when you show up is to first be an ear. Never assume what somebody else needs. Ask.
She believes volunteering or donating money is the most effective way you can help right now. On the ground, about 25 Salvation Army volunteers are spread out across the state. In St. Louis County, serving 400 meals a day. In places like Faribault.
In the process of delivering what we call flood kits. They are cleanup kits for homeowners.
American Red Cross also manning 6 shelters and a temporary evacuation point. You can help these safe shelters by donating online at redcross.org or calling 1-800-RED-CROSS. As sandbagging continues in Waterville, the city set up an account at Franson Bank and Trust. You can donate online or by mailing a check. Uba Ali, WCCO News.
For more information and links on where to donate, just head to WCCO.com.
A damaged dam near Mankato may survive the flooding.
But as Reg Chapman shows us, the dangerous situation is not over yet.
The threat of the dam being breached has gone down. According to the Blue Earth County Emergency Management, the Rapidan Dam has not actually been breached. They say the structure is actually intact, but it's the waters of the Blue Earth River that is eroding the slope. The force of the water continues to flow along the new path it created on the west side of the dam. People came from across the state to see what some call the creation of a new waterfall.
The experience to see what Mother Nature can actually do, being that they didn't see it before all of this, and to see afterwards just what water and Mother Nature can do.
Others looked on in amazement, reminiscing about what the area looked like before the dam plugged up with debris, sending water over it. Memories of that home and store now hanging close to the edge of the slope.
We grew up going there and getting pie. I mean, do a route, get a Pepsi, get a little ice cream, and used to go play in the river down there.
The river is still moving fast, although officials say it has crested and beginning to recede. Crews use a flow meter to measure the speed of the water, all while keeping a watchful eye on the crowd.
Concern now is safety of people that are too curious, to be honest with you.
Keeping people safe while they watch this marvel of nature is priority number one. Officials do not believe the dam will give way, endangering people in low-lying area below, but they are concerned about the sandstone bedrock the dam is built on as it continues to erode. Now the question that has haunted this 114-year-old dam remains, does it stay or does it go?
To take this thing out was like going to be $81 million. To fix it would be like $15 million.
In Blue Earth County, Reg Chapman, WCCO News.
Officials say if the dam did fail, it would raise water levels around 2 feet, which could flood some basements. The Army Corps of Engineers is assessing the dam for damage. By the weekend, several Minnesota rivers are expected to reach dangerously high levels. Some might even break records.
Predicting if and when that could happen is complicated. How do you forecast flooding? Good question. Jeff Wagner shows us the tools used to measure rising rivers.
Harriet Island Park in St. Paul better resembles Lake Harriet at the moment, as the Mississippi River swells past its banks more and more each day.
Our forecast has it rising to 20.5 feet, which is well above the major flood threshold of 17 feet.
Sean Deviney is a senior meteorologist with the National Weather Service.
What can make that 20.5-foot prediction change?
Certainly, how much rainfall we get between now and then could impact it.
We interviewed him Monday before more rainfall at night boosted that prediction closer to 21 feet.
How do you forecast flooding?
It's quite a process that includes observational data, analysis of how much rain has fallen, or in the winter, how much snow is on the ground and how much of that is going to melt and the liquid will be moving through the system.
Meteorologists analyze upcoming precipitation, how much will fall and where it lands. They also take into account whether the soil is dry or saturated, which right now is the latter given our extremely wet spring.
Between all those things, we're able to kind of predict the flow of how much water is going to be flowing through the river at these places and then kind of convert that to a height that impacts the average person, like how high is the river going to get.
Then tools help them measure exactly how high the water gets, like this river gauge along the Crow River. It sends a beam down toward the water to calculate the height.
There's also another type that is at that same location called a bubbler, which is like, it's a line underneath the ground inserted under the middle of the river channel, and it uses pressure to tell how much water is above it.
How important is it to have such an accurate forecast?
I mean, it's extremely important. That's a lot of the cities and the counties are making decisions on roads to possibly close, places to block off.
Forecasting also helps communities get a jump start on filling sandbags, building flood walls, and evacuating buildings.
What's easier to predict, a flood stage or that storm coming a day or two away?
I've done both, and they're both incredibly difficult to predict. I'm not going to say one's easier than another, really. It's just, they're very, very complicated, and predicting the future is never easy, I think, no matter what you're trying to do.
With photojournalist Nick Luneman, Jeff Wagner, WCCO News.
Similar to forecasting storms, Deviney did say that forecasting the height where a river will crest does get easier and more accurate the closer you actually get to that date.
Across our state of 10,000 lakes, they've seemed to turn into one giant puddle here.
Case in point here, this morning we're going to show you the impacts of the historic flooding from all the way north in St. Louis County, all the way down to Mankato and Faribault and every place in between, where state leaders have spent the week surveying the massive amounts of devastation.
And near the Rapidan Dam, which is along Blue Earth River, that's just south of Mankato here, new drone footage shows us the moment that one home went underwater. So people in the area, they came out to watch last night. That fast-running river could see how long this white house right here could stand. Could see how the river is making its way around the dam, so it's eroding the ground beneath the house. And it didn't take long for that erosion to do its damage.
Yeah, right there. I mean, it happens so fast. The White House gives in. It tipped over the edge of the cliff as you watch it again here, and then makes a big splash into the river.
We grew up going there and getting pie. I mean, do a route, get a Pepsi, get a little ice cream, and used to go play in the river down there.
Yeah, I mean, lots of memories. So the question remaining for this 114-year-old dam is, does it stay or does it go?
To take this thing out was like going to be $81 million. To fix it would be like $15 million.
Officials are optimistic the dam itself will hold. If it doesn't, the Public Works Director says it could cause big environmental problems. They're expected to tell us more about that house collapse later this morning. Meanwhile, the Mississippi River near St. Paul has risen to major flood stage.
You can see parts of Harriet Island underwater this morning. Officials say that the worst, though, is still yet to come. Pauline Lee joining us live this morning from St. Paul with a closer look at the rising Mississippi there. Pauline.
Yeah, it's just incredible, right? If you guys take a look behind me, you see off into the distance, that's the pavilion right there. If you're familiar with this area, you know the Mississippi runs behind it, not in front of it. All that water you see in front, that is all flooding. Now, at last checked earlier this morning, the river has risen more than a foot from where it was this time yesterday morning. National Water Prediction Service reports the river now at more than 17.6 feet high. Anything over 17 is considered major flood stage, and the Mississippi is expected to rise another 4 feet or so, potentially cresting sometime this weekend. Crews in the capital city now bracing for the full impact of the rising waters as they block off more roads and trails and pile on those sandbags to more structures to help prevent the water from seeping in. Some people here say they were caught by surprise as to how fast the water has risen.
It's just crazy. Me and my friend went for a walk 5 days ago, and you could see, we could park in this parking lot. We drove over here, and it's just crazy how much it's risen in just 5 days.
Now, those rising waters means some businesses have had to make that tough decision to close temporarily. Coming up in about half an hour or so, we'll tell you who's open, who's not, and who's trying to hang on, guys.
Yeah, lots of good information. Pauline Lee, live in St. Paul. Pauline, we'll check in with you a little bit later. Thank you. Well, as rivers continue to crest, volunteers in Minnesota are answering the call, stepping up to help and clean up.
On the ground, about 25 Salvation Army volunteers are spread out across the state. They are serving 400 meals every day up north in St. Louis County. And further south, Faribault, the American Red Cross is also manning 6 shelters and a temporary evacuation point for those who have been displaced.
The best thing you can do for anyone that you run into that might be impacted for the flood is to let them know to call 211 so that they know the resources out in their communities. The biggest thing to remember for these communities is when you show up is to first be an ear. Never assume what somebody else needs. Ask.
Now, you can help these safe shelters by donating online at redcross.org or calling 1-800-RED-CROSS. In Waterville, the city has set up an account at Franston Bank and Trust. You can donate online or you can mail a check.
There is some good news out of St. Louis County up north this morning. Water levels continue to come down. Storms have caused devastating damage. They did it the last week. More than 1,500 damage points have been recorded throughout the county. St. Louis County Public Works crews completed repairs. That way they could reopen more than a dozen roads, even as the county is still in a state of public emergency.
Now, flooding is causing some health concerns, and later today, a meeting could help you determine if your water is contaminated. Health officials say that if you have a groundwater well, you should take preventative measures to make sure that your well isn't broken and that the floodwater doesn't get inside. They'll also hold meetings to discuss nitrate levels in the drinking water. Now, this is for well owners who are in southern Minnesota. You can learn what the state is doing to try to address these health concerns. The meeting is in Rushford. It's today from 4 to 8. There's another one tomorrow in Mazeppa. That goes from 5 to 8. You can also bring samples of your drinking water to test it for nitrate.